What is up, everybody? This is JP, your online personal trainer, and today I'm here to talk about a pretty important topic, and this especially affects me, so I know if it affects me, it's going to affect a lot of you guys, and that's how to get deeper in a squat. Now, I'm going to mention a few things during the video, but I'm not going to go super in-depth on them. I'm going to go in-depth on the things that I'm going to talk about, but a few things that accompany this problem, like for example, stretching. I'm not going to talk about, I might give you a few stretches to do, but I'm not going to say you need to stretch to be able to get deeper in a squat. If you're not already stretching, that's a problem in and of itself. So I'll get that out the way. If you're not stretching, if you're not doing dynamic warm-ups, if you're not squatting frequently, obviously if you don't do something frequently, you're not going to be able to be good at it. You're not going to be able to get deep in a squat if you don't squat that often. I recommend squatting at least twice a week. So again, stretch. Do static stretching at a different time than your workout. Before you work out, do a good dynamic warm-up. Make sure you squat like twice a week. I would recommend that's the minimum. If you're not doing a lot of volume, you can even probably squat 3 times a week. That would be actually very, very good to increase your squat. But I'm going to talk about some things that are common and then some things that aren't very common. And again, I'm talking about people who can't keep good form and stay upright in a squat. You've probably seen pictures of Olympic lifters or pictures of people who can get really low in a squat. They're perfectly upright. There's no butt wink. Butt wink is the backward rounding of the hips, or the posterior tilt that you get when you try to go deep in a squat for some people, and I get that a lot. I just cannot go low while keeping good form. I stretch, I do my dynamic warm-ups, I do everything that I said that you guys should do, but I still don't know why, and I found some things to get around it, and some of these things I haven't done yet, but I'm going to do eventually. Number one is to widen your feet or point your toes out. You probably heard this before, you're probably already doing it yourself. To explain this pretty simply, if you look at this marker, and it's perfectly straight up, just pretend this is your femur, your thigh, pretend this is your thigh, and you're standing straight up. Now let's just say your toes are pointing directly straight, you're not widening your feet are, let's just say, they're hip width, and they're pretty close together, and you just, remember, your toes are directly straight, and you just squat back. Your femur is going to go like this, directly back, because it's just, you're going directly back. Your hips are shooting back because your feet are close together. So that's as far as, let's just say that's your femur, that's as far as your hips are going to travel back, and your upper body is going to have to bend forward to keep a balance, or you're going to fall backwards. Especially if you think of a back squat. A lot of this is going to pertain to a back squat for a lot of you. If you have a bar on your back, you obviously have to bend forward enough so that the bar stays over your toes. So if your femur goes back and then your upper body has to bend forward, because if the bar is right here, it has to bend, your upper body has to bend forward to keep the bar over your toes, to keep your center of gravity. Obviously, if you don't, you're going to lose the transfer of force through your feet, and you're not going to push as much weight, and in a worst case scenario, you could fall, the bar can hurt you, and you could, potentially, I guess a worst case scenario, you could die. If a bar with 300, 400, 500 pounds falls on your head, it's not going to be, obviously it's not going to feel good. So that's what happens if you keep your feet directly straight. Now let's just say you take your femur, let's just say your legs are straight, but you point your toes out, so it rotates a little bit, your toes are pointed out. If I had another foot, it'd be going out that way. Now if you squat now and you go backwards, your femur is going to look something like that. If you've noticed that the distance backwards traveled is not as far when you point your toes out, which means since your hips don't have to travel as far back, you're not going to have to bend over as far forward to keep the bar over your center of gravity, which means you're going to eventually keep an upright posture. I drew some lines right here too. These are one's thicker than the other, but these lines are the same distance. One is not longer than the other. One is just straight and one is just slightly bent, and that's honestly a pretty shallow widening, or a degree. You could go wider than that, but they're the same length and they're starting at the same spot, but this one that's bent does not go back as far. So basically, when you're widening your feet and you point your toes out, your hips don't travel as far back, which means you don't have to bend as far forward, and because you don't have to bend as far forward, you can keep an upright posture and go a little bit more lower. But this definitely is not going to fix the entire problem. I stretch a ton to be able to go wide. I do sumo deadlifts, which helps on my squat because I'm so used to going wide that it's not a problem for me now. But it still doesn't help the problem a ton. You can't just go wide and then bam, you can go ass to grass in a second with perfect form. It doesn't work like that. And which is where I'm going on to number 2. And this is one I haven't tried yet, not because of because I don't want to, because one, it costs money, and yeah, I guess that's just it. It costs money. Is wear Oli shoes or Olympic lifting shoes. The main reason why is because it has a heel raise. And this goes back to the first example I was using of your femur. If your femur goes backwards and your hips go back, remember, if your hips go back, the further back your hips go, the more you're going to have to bend over, which is kind of the problem here, because you're trying to stay upright in a squat and you're not trying to turn the squat into a good morning is what it is. So think about it. If your femur goes back and the bar's right here, I mean, you could widen your feet, but you could also, your knees can go forward a little bit. And I know this is going to flip some people out, and it's going to cause controversy if you're watching this. And I know a lot of books say that your knees should not go over your toes. And for the most part, I do agree, especially for beginner lifters, because you can cause tibial translation, and that can cause pain in the knee. And transfer of force directly through the knee like that isn't that good. If you think of a sissy squat is where you do a squat on your toes. And I feel like because your heels aren't on the ground completely, like they're not on a stable surface, and you're driving straight through your knees, that can cause a lot of the problems right there. The force is directly, it's almost like down and at an angle. But I feel, and I've read a lot on this, and now it's starting to come out with more and more information. I know tons of people who squat with their knees over their toes a little bit, and I mean heels still on the ground, or at least on the shoes, heels not coming off the ground. If you're an advanced lifter and you know how to use obviously your glutes and your hamstrings for hip extension, and you know how to use your hips throughout the squat, your knees can go over your toes from what I've seen. Like I said, if it bugs you or if it bothers you or you feel like you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But going back to that example, if your hips go backwards, you could potentially push your knees forward and your body's going to be upright. Now, this isn't going to happen magically. Obviously, you would have done this already if you could. The problem is if you want your knees to go forward, which is going to make your hips, again, not go as far back, which is going to help you stay upright, you're going to have to, one, increase your dorsiflexion. Basically, increase the amount that your toes can go closer to your tibia. Plantar flexion is where you point your toes down, and dorsiflexion is where you're pointing your toes up. So essentially, you need to increase the amount of flexion so your toes can go higher and your knees can go a little bit far forward. A lot of people don't stretch this that much, or they do and they can't get that far. I stretch it a little bit, not too much, probably not as much as I should, but which is where you can wear Olympic lifting shoes. If you've seen Olympic lifting shoes, they have a heel raise on the bottom of the shoe, which lets your knees go a little bit far forward. Again, it's not a ton. The standard is about 3/4 of an inch. Some of them go up to 1 inch, which I've never seen higher than that on a shoe for 1 inch. If there are, then that's great. But it's just a little bit. It's only like that much of a heel raise. So it helps you get your knees a little bit far forward, which helps you stay upright. Look up any picture of an Olympic weightlifter. They're lifting hundreds of pounds. Their knees are over their toes, but they have such good upright posture that they're protecting their low back. Their form is like spectacular. You can't really say anything wrong with it except the knees going over their toes, which again is a little bit controversial. And yeah, so I would really recommend that. So again, it's good to combine these to help you be able to get deeper in a squat. And the third one is try different variations of the squat. A lot of you, heard of different variations of the squat, but I mean, sometimes the other variations are just better for you in general. And they could be small, tiny variations. Like for example, when you're doing a back squat, are you doing a low bar squat or a high bar squat? A low bar squat, all that means between a low bar and a high bar squat is that when you're doing a back squat, if the bar is lower on your back, that's a low bar squat. If the bar is higher on your back, that's a high bar squat. You got to think of it like this though. The further down the bar is on your back, the more you're going to have to bend over to keep your feet, or to keep the bar over your feet, which is your center of gravity. The higher the bar is, the less you're going to have to bend over forward to keep the bar over your center of gravity. Now, this is just a small change. To make it an easier example, look at a front squat where the bar is right here. If you think of a front squat, the bar, you have to sit back a little bit more, and you're more upright automatically because the bar is further forward, which means it has to be over your toes. Now, again, the whole point of a squat and to make a good squat is the bar should be moving straight up and down. If you have any left or right variations or movement in path, that's where you're going to get, one, you can fall in the worst case scenario, or two, you're just going to lose a little bit of transfer of force along your kinetic chain, and you're not going to be able to move as much weight, which again, we all want to move more weight, so that's the whole point. So if you think of a front squat versus a back squat, a front squat is going to be a lot more easy to stay upright. So for example, let's just say someone bought Oli shoes, Olympic lifting shoes with the 3/4 inch heel raise, and then they started doing front squats. Those two things right there would make it extremely a lot more easy for the lifter to be able to get low in a squat and to be able to keep an upright torso. Now, like going back to the high bar and low bar squat for a back squat, don't place the bar on your neck, but place the bar up higher on your back for you to be able to get a little bit lower. And I would say for people who can't get low, don't do only back squats. Don't do only front squats. Front squats are good too for people who need to go a little bit lower. Mix in other variations, like for example, do a goblet squat. A goblet squat's just where you hold a kettlebell or a dumbbell in front of you and you do a squat like that. Goblet squats are better for hypertrophy or muscular endurance. So if you have a hypertrophy day, throw in some goblet squats. Trust me, if you do a goblet squat, you're gonna realize, oh dang, these are letting me go way lower than a back squat is. You don't always have to do back squats. So mixing in some other variations can maybe help. Honestly, if you do goblet squats more often and it helps you get low, that's probably going to help you get a little bit better dorsiflexion. It's going to help you get more range of motion for your hypertrophy work. Yes, for your strength work, you're still going to want to do front squats and back squats. But again, if you couple the things that I've said in here, buy Oli shoes, widen your feet. Obviously, like I said at the beginning, stretch. You should already been doing that. You know, and then try a high bar squat instead. Those things should definitely help you get lower in your squat. If you like videos like this, please like this video, share it with a friend. Go down to all my social media, my Instagram, my Facebook, my Twitter. I'm putting them all down below. And obviously, you've already found my YouTube. If you have any recommendations for videos that you want me to do in the future, please post them down below. I will reply. But until next time, see ya.